Okay, good morning. I see all my little circles up here.
There we go.
There we go. Hi, I'm Wendy Whitesides. I'm your host for today. It's just 11:01, so we're gonna wait just a couple minutes to let some people in. If everyone would kindly open up your chat, let me know who you are and where you're from, so we can sort of get a feel for our audience today. Your chat box is up at the top. If you're on a PC, if you're on a phone, it's down at the bottom for iPhones. That's all I know. So, open up your chat. Let me know.
Good morning, Debbie.
I'll start reading.
Good morning, Elaine. Good morning, Christy and Jason. I didn't know there was a Dallas, North Carolina.
Yeah, we have a Denver too.
Just to be confusing, right?
Absolutely. Yes. Don't be shy, people. Northeast Pennsylvania.
Is Kamala with you too, Elaine? Well, good morning to Kamala as well.
Okay, well, I'm a belief of to be a good steward of your time. Again, my name is Wendy Whitesides. I'm the Director of Education here. And this morning, y'all have the wonderful to spend some time with my friend and cohort in crime, Robin Sullivan. Robin has been in the aviculture biosphere for I mean the world for a long time. She has many accolades as you can read about on in her bio on the registration page. She's a worldwide traveler. She has she's in the American Federation for Aviculture. She's had several offices with IAATE. She's the owner of the Leather Elves. She also does a Friday night fun time on Facebook where you can get up to date on what's happening with many topics on parrots and aviculture in general. And she also hosted the Rockstar Tour, which was a lot of fun. She came down and was with. We were one of the stops, and we are so grateful for the work you've done for that. Enrichment is a very important part of parents' life. So that's not just toys. So this is why I've asked Robin to talk some more about it, because anything you see, smell, taste, do is also enrichment for your birds. So without, let's see, little housekeeping. If you do have questions, there's a Q&A at the top of the tab here that you can ask questions with. We'll leave the chat open so that you can talk amongst yourselves, and I'll be monitoring both of them. So without further ado, here is Mrs. Robin Sullivan.
Thank you so much, Wendy. Just so you all know, if you haven't seen me present before, I want to thank you for the opportunity to be here too. And thank you guys for spending your Saturday morning, late morning with us. As Wendy said, enrichment is such an important part of our birds' lives. And I titled this enrichment as a behavioral tool because I think we'll talk about enrichment in general, but we'll also talk about ways to modify behavior using enrichment. And I know Debbie does a lot of this as well. If you have, presenting online is tough for me because I'm a very interactive presenter. But so if you have questions, if you think of things, or you say, hey, I have a great idea about that, please put it in the chat or the Q&A, and then I can address it when you think of it, rather than making you wait till the end, and having that thought in the back of your head the whole time, because I know I get distracted if I have to I can't hold a thought for more than 5 minutes. So but so as a behavior, just so you guys know too, my background, I have been in aviculture for a very long time. Prior to that, I worked in behavior modification with people. So it's the same science. It's just we need to kind of modify it a little bit to fit the needs of our birds. So let's get started. So as a definition, enrichment. So if you look up enrichment, a lot of times the definition that will come up is medical in nature. It's, supplements, things like that. But for our purposes, environmental enrichment refers to modifications that act to enhance the physical and social stimulation provided by the captive environment. And so, and the method is commonly employed by zoos, and it's beneficial both for the animal's behavior, physiology, and primarily through stress reduction. So that's a lot to take in, right? For me, enrichment is anything that enhances or increases the quality of life for an animal, whether it's a bird or a mammal or a reptile, whatever that may be. But environmental enrichment is something that it's outside of, it's in the animal's environment, but it's outside of what the animal has to interact with it in order to have it be useful. Okay, so just the thing to keep in mind, and I'm sure you all know this already, it's enrichment makes life better. It's simply put, we're trying to improve animal welfare, and that's what it does. So life without enrichment. Captive animals are definitely susceptible to chronic stress due to restricted space, lack of hiding places, presence of visitors, lack of resources that promote physical and mental stimuli. This refers mostly to zoos, but it definitely applies to our setting as companion parrot owners. They are, I am 100% behind companion parrot ownership. We absolutely want them in our lives. We want to interact with them. We want to do conservation, but we do need to keep in mind that we are impacting their lives and adding stressors because of some of these issues, like restricted space, lack of hiding places. In birds, abnormal behaviors such as stereotypy, self-mutilation, feather picking, chewing on cage bars and walls, fearfulness, and it's in the definition, it's in this quote. Fearfulness for me is a hard one, because what does that look like? And excessive aggression are examples of those behavioral changes. They're usually a sign of low quality of life. So if we go back to, our first thought, we want to improve quality of life. We want to enhance the quality of life. So this is exactly what we don't want. All right. The stereotypy. So I don't know about you guys, but when I was little, I used to go to the zoo, and I thought that big cats and big carnivores and stuff, just all they did was walk all day, right? I figured, oh, they must be out. They must cover miles and miles when they're, not in captivity. Not true. If you look at the activity budget of a big carnivore, most of it is spent at rest. But when you go to the zoo, you see the lions pacing back and forth. We see birds who are doing that. Anybody, my cockatoo owners out there? We got any cockatoo owners? That spin, the spin that cockatoos do. At first, it's really cute, but then we figure out that it's a stereotypical behavior. It's something that we don't want to see. Self-mutilation and feather picking. There are so many reasons for those, but a lot of times it's lack of appropriate enrichment. And we'll talk about that too. They did a study with children, and I think it's applicable to our birds as well. The study had children go into a room, and there were all kinds of toys and just all things for them to interact with. And they got to stay in there for a while. And then they went to another room, and that room was completely empty. And they asked them, I mean, these are children who can self-report. And they asked them, you know, which room did you like better? And if 100% of the children liked the room with things to do. And I think I like to keep that in mind when I think about seeing birds in cages without a lot of things to engage in, seeing birds on play stands without anything to do. And I think that's really important when we consider what we need to provide. So life without enrichment is not the way we want to be. It's not a luxury. It's not, you know, oh, I got him great food and I got him, you know, groomed and I took him to the vet. Oh, I got to do that enrichment thing. And I will tell you, I've worked with a lot of zoos and facilities, and oftentimes enrichment's at the bottom of the list. You know, clean, feed, medicate, enrich, if I have time at the end of the day. And it's that way until administration looks at it and says, the quality of life is not good for these animals. I'm seeing these negative effects when they're not mentally and physically stimulated. We're seeing, you know, what's termed as aggressive behavior. We're seeing, you know, things like the feather destructive behavior because there's nothing else to do. So providing enrichment is absolutely not a luxury. You know, the study above on the previous slide, the behavior changes can be easily avoided with proper enrichment. And, you know, that's a very vague term, proper enrichment, and we will talk more as we go on. So does anybody have any questions at this point? Okay. I'm going to assume that's a no. Oh, okay. Because we've got, I'm new to Teams, just so you know, to the Microsoft Teams. So bear with me if you raise your hand or have a question and I don't see it. Let me know. Wendy, do we have?
No questions.
Okay, thank you. All right. Let's see. So proper enrichment. What does that look like? You know, I love it when I say to people, you know, how's your program? How's your enrichment program? How's it going? And I get, well, we're doing enrichment. Well, we've got this thing, you know, everybody gets this, everybody gets this, everybody gets this. Okay. So is that proper enrichment? I would say no. You know, it's not everybody gets a walnut first thing in the morning, or everybody gets this toy, this one toy, and everybody gets the same thing, because it doesn't matter how big or small they are. You know, I've had people tell me, oh, I have budgies. They're social. They don't need a lot of enrichment. Have you guys ever seen a budgie that has no enrichment? It's flighty and you know, you see these behaviors that you just don't want to see in a bird in human care. The kind of bird is not an issue. I don't care what kind of bird you have. You need to provide enrichment. And I have people say, oh, well, I got a little bird, I don't have to do as much. That's not true. I had a conversation with a colleague the other day about starter birds. And in my opinion, and it's just my opinion, you guys may differ, but I don't think there is such a thing as a starter bird, because they all need proper enrichment, proper diet, proper interaction. They need all those things. So it doesn't matter what kind of bird you have. And what the experts say may not work. So I absolutely encourage you guys to learn as much as you possibly can from as many people as you possibly can. But I've got quotation marks around experts there, because there are some sketchy experts out there that are online, and they're keyboard warriors, and they'll tell you, I can fix this in 2 days. I can change that behavior. And, you know, Debbie, I'm sure you've heard it before. Well, this group told me that they could fix my problems. Absolutely. Right. Yeah, you can fix that problem in a day or two, but it's going to come back. So when you're thinking about what you want to do for your bird, listen to what the experts say. modify it and make it work for you. Because I can tell you all day long, you've got to have this, this, and this. Well, maybe that doesn't work in your house. Maybe that doesn't work in your setup. Maybe that doesn't work in your family. You've really got to, so listen to what the experts say. But then, and I don't care who it is. I don't care if it's, I don't know, the top of the top when it comes to people who are present. Laura Joseph, Barbara Heidenreich, Steve Martin, Jason Crean. We can go on and on. I don't care what they say. Make it work for you. Okay. Um, their history does matter. Find out as much as you possibly can about your bird. Where did they come from? Have they ever seen a toy before? Have they ever been offered olfactory enrichment before? Do they come from a noisy setting, a quiet setting? Were they free ranging where they came from? This is particularly birds that are rehomed, but it also, if you're getting a bird that's you're the first owner, what was the setup like where they were bred, or what was the setup like in the store that they're coming from? So the history does matter. The current situation matters as well. You've got to be realistic about what you're offering and what you can and can't do. You can read all the books you want. You can look books. That shows you how old I am. You can go to as many sites online as you want. But you've got to be realistic about what you can and cannot actually provide. And choice is one of the biggest things that you need to think about. You need to be aware that you're offering enough choices, because when you think about it, and I've said this before when I've presented, you we take these birds into our homes, we bring them into our lives, and we do take away some choices. And so, even if they're captive bred, there are still, we don't see a lot of not captive bred birds, wild caught anymore, thankfully. But we're still taking away choices that they are kind of hardwired to make. So you've got to make sure that you're offering enough choices. So there are different types of enrichment. I am a list person. I'm someone who kind of compartmentalizes things. So this is how I organize my thoughts about enrichment. And you don't have to do it this way. And if any of you have ever worked in a facility like a zoo or some kind of location that shows parrots, they may have called these things different, like tactile is often called manipulative. But these are the categories that I use when I'm trying to figure out how to present enrichment. And we'll get into each one of them. Visual, auditory, tactile, olfactory, social, exercise, and dietary. Dietary is at the bottom of the list. Even though it's diet is probably one of the, or if not the most important part of husbandry. I put dietary at the bottom of the enrichment list because it is the easiest one, in my opinion, and it can get overused. So that's down at the bottom. All right, let's see. So visual enrichment. Obviously our birds are very visually stimulated. If you just look at them, it makes sense. It's common sense that they would be visually stimulated, as beautiful as they are. So you can do natural or artificial. Think about what they're looking at when you place your cage, or when you place your play stand. Think about what their view of the world is, or you can provide, things. I'm not a huge fan of TV because I feel like it becomes a babysitter, but it is a form of visual enrichment. Make it engaging so that there's some feedback between the animal and what they're seeing, and what's their response. If I had my Kaik was in a big picture window, his cage was, and we had crows that used to come down, and I swear that he harassed them more than they harassed him, but that response was not a negative one. If you've got a bird that is exhibiting, you would term fearful, if they're shying away, they're moving away from the window, if that's they're near a window, they're they're going down to the bottom of the cage when other birds are outside. You want to think about that, because those kind of reactions are enrichment, because enrichment is not always rainbows and unicorns. It sometimes can be not the most pleasant experience. We don't want to overdo that, but just note what the response is to the visual enrichment that you're offering. Auditory. So our birds, right? They make a lot of noise. I'm sure you guys get the people that come in and say to Companion Parrots Rehomed or Parrot University and say, I want a quiet bird. Well, okay, let me get that stuffy for you, because that's what you're going to get. There's no such thing, but we can work with some of that. Music is great. And I've said this before, and I don't know if you remember, Wendy, but all music is good except country music. Country music is not good for birds.
Why?
I'm on a campaign to stop people listening to country music, and I'm doing it through the birds. No, all music is good, and you will find out by playing music what kind of music your birds enjoy, and what by enjoy, what does that look like? It looks like bopping around. It looks like paying attention to that music. So it varies from bird to bird, and country is fine, I suppose. You guys are fairly south, so we'll let you have that. Playing vocalizations, other species vocalizations. I have not, Debbie. Debbie asked if I had ever used, and I'm going to butcher this, it's solfeggio frequencies. I have not. I have heard good things about it. And it sounds, Christy's typing an answer here to that question. It's interesting, Debbie, because I have a colleague who is a musician and an aviculturist, and we've discussed creating frequencies, creating sounds that from observation appear to soothe. So that's a huge project that we've been working on for a long time. You may be from the south, but your Kiwi loves Adele. Okay, that's good. I'm glad. So Debbie, no, I have not. You can play vocalizations. You'll buy that. Okay, I'm working on it, Deb. I can't promise it tomorrow. Vocalizations, again, this is one of those situations where positive, negative, you have to observe and see what the response is to playing those. I've told this story before. I was presenting in the Netherlands, and everybody brought their bird to the event, and they had them, they use baby carriers as carriers for their birds. It's kind of cool because old baby carriers, because the handle comes up and they could use that as a perch. They could get down in the seat. So they were all lined up on the back. I played a bald eagle, an American bald eagle vocalization. Every single one of those birds was at attention. And I can guarantee you that they have not heard that before, but hardwired to know that that was a bird of prey, a possible threat. And so just be careful when you're playing vocalizations, what response you're getting, because we don't want to stress them out too much. And same species vocalizations can increase the vocalizations of your birds. You can also do callbacks. That's kind of fun to do. If you've got a bird, and we'll talk about this a little bit, if you've got a bird that's doing a little bit of over vocalizing, that's the PC term for screaming, because we don't want to say screaming. So we've got over vocalization, and with the over vocalization, sometimes you can turn it into the bird makes a noise, then you make a noise, because that's what they would be using vocalizations for in the wild anyway. It would be a check-in, like in the morning, when you've got first thing in the morning, let's make sure everybody's here. Let's make sure everybody made it through the night. What are we going to do today? We're going to go here and roost. We're going to go here and forage. So you can do those callbacks, and they can sometimes decrease vocalizations that you don't want. The TV, again, another auditory option. With it, I will tell you, from everyone that I have, presented to and talked with, the cartoons are usually a hit with parrots. My Again, I think that goes back to frequencies. I think it's the tone of voices of the cartoon characters. That's my observation. But I do think you got to be careful, or else you're going to have, your birds vocalizing like cartoons. And I don't think that's anything we really want to encourage. It's cute for a minute, but then not so much. Um, tactile enrichment, all different kinds of tactile. And I think, so chewing, obviously giving them things to chew up, it's what they do. Things to manipulate, to move around, puzzles. A lot of the dog and cat, I know, gotta go to the other departments when you go to the big box stores, if you go to the big box stores, and they've got puzzles for dogs and cats. Oh, that's cool. Kamala loves to do different animal vocalizations like chickens, goats, cows. So how fun is that? And I know that Elaine is working with a tablet with Kamala and doing some reading, and I think that's fun. It's a great, it's a form of callback. It's a form of vocalization that's appropriate. So manipulating the puzzles, the foraging puzzles that they've got for dogs, you can use those for birds. And it's a tactile opportunity. Different textures. So when you think about our birds when they're out in the wild, they are experiencing all different kinds of textures. They're experiencing, all the wood, the bark, the ground. I put feet too, because I think sometimes we forget about this. We forget about the fact that our birds, this is what they investigate their world with, their beak and their feet. And so, different size perching, different textures, excuse me, for them to walk on. Definitely, I've got this picture here, and I always like to caution that if you're going to have your bird out, I would suggest a harness. And I would also suggest that you make sure that the grass is not treated with anything. In this case, this was an enclosed, like backyard / lanai kind of situation. So it wasn't, he wasn't a flight risk. So, but yeah, so all different kinds of tactile opportunities. And I think tactile is one of the easier ones to do. But I've got chewing on here. So if you're giving your birds all wood or things to chew that are easily broken down, easily chewed up, a softwood, you want to think about mixing it up. You want to think about a hardwood, a softwood, really, giving them both and giving them other things, shreddables, things like that. I didn't even put that on here. Shreddable as tactile. Just be careful that if it's breeding season, that you're not offering nest building materials. Okay. We all know that, the blocks turn into matchsticks, and, but the shreddables sometimes will turn into nesting material, and we don't want to put them in a situation where now they're in a situation where they want to breed, but they don't have that opportunity. So it's just causing some frustration, and you may see some negative behavior out of that. So you just want to make sure you're not pushing that breeding stimuli, if that makes sense. All right. Olfactory. So you want to do safe scents, herbs, things like that, spices, not candles, not air fresheners, not, all of the, cardboard is a staple in bird homes. Absolutely. And it's a different tactile opportunity. So with scents, I used to kind of shy away a little bit. And there was a lot of literature that said that, you didn't have to do olfactory enrichment with parrots because they have their olfactory sensation is not that good. it is that good. It's just a matter of they process fewer chemical scents than we do. So we think, oh, that's not, as much. It's the same with taste buds. We have more taste buds than they do. So safe scent trails, things like that. I love using herbs and spices as enrichment. This moment that you see right here was validation for me. And I believe I've told Wendy and Debbie this before. Um, this was in New Zealand. That's a kaka parrot. And what I had, we walked into the enclosure. Yeah, don't try this at home. Probably not my brightest moment. Maybe I had jet lag, being that letting a bird that I didn't know have its face that close to mine. But the bird, I had, washed my hair with like a fruity shampoo or something and put on moisturizer. And that bird came over, put its nares up against my nose. I could hear it inhale, and then it turned and started preening. So there is something to olfactory. It's like I said, you don't need to go, overboard with all different, a huge array of scents, but it is something to have. It is an enrichment option that you can offer. Exercise. So I have these flight pictures here. Flight is a choice. And so that's not, the only exercise. Walking, flying, climbing, stretching, any kind of movement. You've got to keep them moving. So we've got them in captivity. Okay. They're in human care, and we've limited the amount of movement that they have. If they're not outside flighted, which is fine. But we've limited that. So now we need to figure out a way to provide enrichment that asks them to do these things. So walking. So a lot of times we make toys and we make food bowls super easily accessible. And what happens then is our birds are getting all this great food. They're being well cared for, but they're not getting any exercise because they just have to sit on the perch and they can reach up to the toy, or they just have to sit on the perch and they can reach over to the food bowl. I love making it so they have to stretch, they have to use muscles that they might not use. Hanging things from the center of the cage encourages them to have to use muscles hanging upside down that they might not use otherwise. Putting things on opposite sides of the cage, bowls on opposite sides of the cage, to get them moving from one to the other. Climbing structures are wonderful. If you've got any of you have those cargo nets, I love them because you can put stuff up and you can hang the cargo net, either suspend it from the ceiling or have it hanging up and down, and have different, like almost like enrichment stations in amongst the cargo net. So they've got to climb to get to stuff, and then they interact once they get there. It's kind of like positive reinforcement that I did all this exercise. It's like, okay, it's when you do that really long walk and then you get an ice cream at the end. Oh wait, is that not how it's supposed to work? How it works for me. But they get that exercise, and then there's a reinforcer of maybe it's a foraging activity in one of the spots on the cargo net, and then they do the foraging activity. So now you're encouraging that as well, and then it's inherently reinforcing because it's right there as part of the activity. So exercise, I can't say how important it is that we don't always hand them everything on a silver platter. We want to make them have a good life. We want but we still want to have birds. We still want to have animals that can entertain themselves independently, that can do activities that require them to get exercise, because we don't want these. I mean, Amazons are notorious for being overweight. And it's so hard to see that because, excuse me, there's no need for it. It's either being overfed or it's not getting enough activity. So you really want to think about how do you keep them and get them moving. Dietary. So this is the last one because, like I said, we can fall into the food is love trap. Okay. And dietary enrichment usually gets the biggest like fireworks, you know. Um, it's easy to do. You get a quick response, and so it's reinforcing for us as humans. It's reinforcing because we care about these birds. We want to give them this great life. We want to really keep them living the enriched life. But to get that quick response, dietary is an easy one. So foraging prolongs the feeding time. I have said this time and time again, but I'm going to say it one more time for you guys. I would love to see birds that are 100% foraging. That's how they get their food, because that's such a wonderfully natural behavior. There was a bird on the West Coast, up in the Pacific Northwest, that I had the occasion to meet, that all of his food was delivered through foraging activities. And when we get to how we're using this as a behavioral tool, you'll see how that makes such a difference. Having a bird that's foraging versus Kamala, she forages for everything. Kudos to you, Elaine. I know that that's taken a lot of work, but it can help you avoid so many behaviors. So large pieces. This is we don't, again, back to, we want to give them this wonderful life. We want them to be enriched and what we term happy. But big pieces of food, fruit, things like veggies, um, that's what they do. Those beaks on their faces are not built for teeny tiny pieces, that have been all chopped up and made into this wonderful little tiny bites for them. Okay. They will eat that, and it's great if you're making chop and that's how it's coming out. But throw some big pieces in there, because that's what those beaks are built to do. Okay. And variety. We want to offer variety when you in it, but don't go crazy. So I had a colleague years ago who said to me, I want to give my bird 100 different food items in a year. And she was so proud of herself. And I was like, why? Because that's again taking our human sensibilities and putting them on our birds. We want variety, but it's seasonal variety. It's manageable variety. So if you look at what a bird is, and Jason Crean, Dr. Crean and I have talked about this numerous times, that yes, you want variety, you want visual variety, you want there to be the nutrients that your birds need, but to give them like all these different things that they would never ever encounter in the wild is really a waste of your time. So variety, but manageable variety. So if that makes sense. Um, and then contra freeloading. So I love contra freeloading. It's their studies have shown that animals prefer to work for their food. So I know one of you out there went, oh no, my bird's lazy. So it's okay if you said that. But I don't know any of you. I can't even see you guys. But I can tell you that you're probably enabling them to be lazy like that. Contra freeloading is a scientific is a scientific fact that given a bowl with food versus a foraging activity, or having to go through the bowl and pull out things that are food items. Oh, that's awesome. Tracy says her birds get visibly excited when it becomes a game. And that's what we're looking for. And I know Elaine does all foraging with Kamala, and it's just, there's so much to that. And it's just, but contra freeloading, that's the way to go. And it takes a while, so, and we can talk about more foraging later on, but it takes a while when you get to the point that, okay, your bird, maybe this bird, so with rehomed birds in particular, you don't know what their level of experience is with foraging. Okay. And so you don't want to go to the everything's in foraging activities right off the bat. Okay. You need to observe, you need to offer some pretty simple ones. And you'll know right away if your bird's like, "Peh, got that. I got it. I got it." Then you increase the difficulty as you go. But you want to make sure that they understand what you're doing and what the goal of it is. Okay. So contra freeloading, please don't just write them off as lazy. Um, Give them a little bit of a challenge and then increase the challenge as you go. Social enrichment. So play, interaction with you guys. Training is social enrichment. Sometimes just sharing space. I did a consult the other night with a woman that has a bird that at this point she's not handling this bird. And she said to me, he's afraid of everything. And I said, well, what does that look like? And we defined what she meant by that. But through the course of the consult, I was watching, and the bird's cage with the door open was adjacent to the sofa. And that bird was perfectly happy to be happy, was exhibiting calm behavior. In that cage right next to the woman, on the couch. So they were sharing space, which is social enrichment. There was no need for her to pick up that bird. There was no need for, her to reach in and take the bird or hold the bird or snuggle the bird, any of that. They were just sharing space, and that is enriching in itself, or can be. They can have human or avian companions. I am a firm believer in you don't have to get another bird to be a friend for your bird, but you do have to fill that flock gap. So social can be human, avian, whatever works in your setting, but you want to just be sure that you're not forcing that social relationship with a human and a bird. I've had, I wish I had even a quarter for every time somebody said, my bird won't let me snuggle with him. That's okay. It's not necessary. If you really, I hate to say this, but if you want a snuggly pet, you probably are looking for a mammal and not a bird. And you really want to be careful what that relationship looks like. I love these two photos because I feel like they really demonstrate what a positive relationship looks like. That's Jody in the middle with the macaw. And Jody has a store out in the Pacific Northwest. And that bird just we were outside, came over, it was again, a very controlled setting. And the bird was kind of walking around on the table. We were sitting out under an umbrella, and that Chonka went up and just kind of spread his wings. And to me, that's the sign of a very, very comfortable bird. And Jody has a great the bird is no longer with us, but had a great relationship with that bird. This little boy, these birds were trained at a very young age to be comfortable with that position. We were doing a animal welfare fair, and we were kind of working with getting little kids who weren't super comfortable with birds. So we weren't forcing the relationship on the bird or the child, because that's something else we need to keep in mind. I will admit we did force the bird on the animal control officer that was there, and the bird proceeded to snap the buttons right off of her uniform. But and I have pictures of all that. But we want to be careful that what the relationship is, and that it's a mutually beneficial relationship. We're not looking for, or hopefully we're not looking for a soulmate in a bird. They can be our companions, but we're not necessarily looking for that type of relationship. So you want to fill your toolbox. The more options you have, the more success you'll have. And it doesn't mean to overwhelm. You don't want to fall into the dead end routine. So it's easy And because again, this works on a positive reinforcement basis. So you find things, different enrichment opportunities that your bird really enjoys or appears to enjoy. Okay. Exhibits the behavior that you have named enjoyment or happy. So there you find these things and you keep buying them. You keep buying the same toy over again. You keep offering the same, dietary enrichment. You keep offering the same, you play the exact same cartoon every day. Eventually, that's your routine becomes a dead end routine, and you're not going to get the same kind of responses. So you want to be careful that it's not super repetitive and you don't have all of your go-tos. You can keep those in your repertoire, you can keep those in your routine, but you want to make sure that you're mixing things up a little bit. And be willing to review, revise, and adapt. So you're creating this enrichment program, you're creating how you want to give your birds enrichment. The toy that costs $100, if you've got, a big macaw, the toy that costs $100, if you don't get a response, you need to look at that. You need to see, am I not getting the response that I anticipated? And how can I change that? How can I make it more interesting? And so that the birds will want to interact with it. So that's with regard to any kind of enrichment. You may think it's a fabulous idea. And I don't know about you guys, but I do this all the time. I have these wonderful ideas in the shower, and then I go to implement them, and they don't always turn out exactly how I thought they would. The response from the animals is not always what I thought it was going to be. And I have to be honest with myself and honest to the relationship, in the relationship that I have with these animals, that I'm willing to revise it and change it. Even though I thought it was the best idea ever, you don't always get that response. Tips on where to find new ideas. So Tracy, I need you to clarify that a little bit for me, because we can definitely come up with some new ideas and see what we can do today. So while I'm talking, if you want to let me know what exactly we're looking for, we can kind of address that. So what's in your toolbox? Enrichment opportunities that are building your training, building your relationship. Observation is one of the key ways to figure out if enrichment's working or not, and if it's doing what you anticipated it would do. And observation, not necessarily the second you put something in. Give it, if you're talking about an item that you're presenting or an opportunity that you're presenting, give it some time. Make sure that you're not just observing that initial reaction. You want to observe and see what happens, when you first offer an opportunity, but you also want to see what happens down the road. Okay, a couple days after you first offer that, because it may take a while for your bird to be willing to use that, to be willing to interact with what you're offering. So don't give up on stuff right away. It can take a little bit longer than you may have anticipated. And knowing about your bird's history, knowing the things that we discussed in the beginning, those kind of things, having that knowledge will help you. It should be part of your toolbox. It should be part of how you're creating these new things that you're going to offer to your birds. So what are you modifying? When we talk about modifying behavior, do you want to increase a certain behavior? Do you want to decrease a certain behavior? Do you want to introduce some new experience and you have concerns that you're not going to get a positive response from that new experience? So you need to decide what it is, what's the goal with what you're presenting. So know your bird and how it reacts to things. Don't assume though, okay? Don't say, oh, he's never like this. It's just not going to work. I know him. Those kind of phrases get you stuck. Okay. So you want to think about knowing your bird, knowing your birds, about your bird's species, knowing about, your bird, knowing what they would be doing if they were a wild bird. Would they be on the ground? Are they ground foragers? arboreal foragers, how big is their flock size, those kind of things. And then knowing your individual bird. So new ideas for changing the cage environment and creating more different interactive enrichment. Yes, we can absolutely talk about that. Let me go through this and then we'll have time at the end and we can kind of brainstorm some ideas. So you want to set a goal for enrichment. I know this feels like a lot of work, but what kind of behavior do you want to elicit with the opportunity that you're offering? And what's the best tool for the job? It's not always the simple one, and it's not always the most involved one. Like with foraging, offering a balled up cupcake paper with a nut in it may be the best tool for the job if you want to keep your bird moving, and it's got to be quick, and it's got to be so it's got to be the best tool for the job to engage your bird, what they get out of it, and for you. So if you are strapped for time, that may be the best tool for the job. And then you want to create a plan. Okay, so what does it look like in your setting? What's the goal? What do I want to accomplish with this? And how am I going to present it? So what works best? What type of enrichment? And you will find that different birds gravitate towards different types of enrichment. But you want to continue to offer all the different categories. There may be some, though, when you're looking to modify behavior, there may be some that work better than others. Where is it located? Are you offering this enrichment opportunity on a play stand? Are you offering it in a cage? Are you offering it outside in an aviary? What works best, and where is your bird most likely to engage? So you want to think about, through your observations, you should know where your bird is most likely to engage with new things. And that's where you want to start presenting that new opportunity. Who participates? Is it something that you're just giving your bird that they're kind of going to do on their own? Is it some interactive, Tracy said that her bird gets visibly excited when it becomes a game or a task. So is it something like that where you're building on your relationship and you're participating in this enrichment as well? Have you had previous positive results with something similar? So if you have presented something and gotten a horrible negative response, okay, maybe the bird's moved away, maybe the bird has bitten, whatever that negative response is, you want to make sure you're not pushing things along those with that type of opportunity to try to turn it into a positive result. You want to work on what you've got. Okay, I see this really works. Let me change it a little bit. Let me enhance this a little bit and try it with a little bit different. And you want to consider your setting. Do you have children in the house that when they're away at school and it's quiet, it might be a better time if you're home. It might be a better time to offer new opportunities. Does your bird thrive on that flock dynamic? And maybe right after dinner when everybody's hanging out, is that when it's best to offer new things? So you want to think about what works best in your setting. So identifying reinforcers. You want to think about what is it that kind of gets my bird excited. So Tracy, I would, reinforcement seems to be the act of engaging with that game or that task. That's reinforcing for that bird. Toys, for some birds, a new toy is all it takes. That's what's reinforcing. So you get them to work on this other opportunity, this foraging opportunity, and then you put a toy in that they have interacted with before. Socialization. Is it something that they need more socialization, they need more time with you? So is that what they're looking for? Is that's what's positively reinforcing for them? Food items. So food is the most common reinforcer, but it's not always the only reinforcer. And you also need to remember that not all enrichment includes a toy. So some of those other forms of enrichment that I mentioned, they are, definitely they can be used instead of just a toy. Because people do oh, well, I bought toys, I'm all good. Not necessarily. There are definitely other senses that need to be addressed. So what can you change with enrichment? Feather destructive behavior can be lessened once you've ruled out medical. Feather destructive behavior can be changed with enrichment. Excessive vocalizations. I will say a lot of times people will, with regard to vocalizations, some people will try to out vocalize their bird to get louder. Or you're never going to win. So the enrichment to change vocalizations needs to be a little bit quieter. Yeah, Tracy, something that they already love. It's like, it's kind of that it's your pass to get in. Like, okay, I know you like this, so let's do this. This will, we'll try this new thing, and you can, if you try this new thing, you can have this other thing that is really a favorite. You can change biting. You can, hopefully decrease biting. Territoriality. When we look, a lot of times people get very anxious about, I can't reach into my bird's cage to get them out or to change things around. Well, when you look at a cage, if you were to look at a nest cavity in the wild, it's the exact same thing. There's a hole, they live in there, and now you're reaching into their nest cavity. So with enrichment offered outside of that space, you can work on territoriality that sometimes does go with some negative behaviors that we don't want to see. There's so many things that you can change with enrichment, and it's really so it's behavior modification the sneaky way, and I kind of like it because it's kind of checking two boxes. Hopefully you're decreasing an aberrant behavior, something you don't want to see, and you're increasing their quality of life by offering them new enrichment strategies. So yeah, lots of things can change. Excuse me. So training is the same, and equals socialization. This to me, this picture again says it all. That's a baby bird, and just the bird was having a ball and she was having a ball. So this training and equals socialization equals positive relationships. Working with your bird, spending time, training, or just sharing space can enhance that relationship. And you want to replace those unwanted behaviors with positive enrichment interactions. So training itself is enriching. It's definitely, if it's done correctly, you don't want to prolong and do big long sessions and end them on bad note. You want it always to end on a positive note. And because that's when you've got, okay, look, we worked on this, we did this, we had a positive outcome. That's when you close that window and you finish out your training session. So you want to take and replace those unwanted behaviors with positive interactions. You want to take, and because you can't just make unwanted behaviors go away. It would be wonderful if we could just make them go away and not happen anymore. But what we really, really want is we want to replace that behavior with something else. Because if a behavior just goes away, there's a vacuum that needs to be filled. And hopefully we're filling it with these positive interactions. So the plan, you want to create a plan, set a goal, break down approximations. So I know if you've worked with Debbie at all, I'm sure she's told you guys about approximations, the small steps that make up a behavior. And by approximations, in this case, I'm talking about enrichment. You don't want to overwhelm. I had a colleague once who used to think you had to put, a dozen toys in the cage. It had to be full. Not necessarily. And you don't have to do all of the things that we're talking about today all at once. You can break them down. You can do them in small increments. Trial and error is the best method. If everything worked, easy, as far as like, I did this and it worked, I did this and it worked, I did this and it worked. So Debbie and I wouldn't have jobs anymore. It would be bad. You want to really look at what worked, what didn't work, trial, and there will be error, but you just want to, it's terrible, isn't it? I mean, it would be nice if it worked that way, but you want to take those errors and learn from them. Okay. And revise if needed. I don't know about you guys. I'm a huge control freak, and I self-admitted, but when I'm doing training, when I'm working with animals, I really need to take that step back and say, you know what, I got to start over again, or I've got to revise this, or I've got to change this. Because if you don't, you just keep butting heads, and it's not, you're not going to get anywhere. You're not going to modify that behavior. So you need to be willing to kind of take what you're seeing, take your observations, and then revise them as you need to. Okay. All right. So here's a list. Effects of enrichment. The visual, it can be an alternative to screaming. If they're looking at something else, they may not be screaming. Auditory, callbacks can take the place of screaming. Callback enrichment. Tactile, it can offer an alternative to biting or plucking. Like, when you think about it, if a bird's got something in its mouth, it can't bite you. It's not physically possible. Okay. A bird that's plucking, a bird that's over preening, if they're working on something else, this part of them, or their feet, if they're holding things, is what they can't pluck at the same time. The two behaviors are contraindicated. They're not going to work at the same time. Olfactory, to biting, plucking. I have cage aggression here. I don't really love that term. But so, that's the reaching in the cage and you're getting bitten because you're reaching in the cage. Olfactory, if you've got them involved in another part of the cage, those things aren't going to be happening. Exercise, all those things. It can offer an alternative to biting, plucking, cage aggression, screaming. All of those things can go away if they're providing more exercise for them. Dietary, biting, plucking, screaming. Again, if your bird's busy foraging and engaged in an enrichment activity, foraging for dietary items, those things can go away. And social, it's an alternative to territoriality. So if you've built this relationship, you're sharing that space, it may be easier to then modify the behavior to a step up, or to a step up to a stick. And social as well, if you're providing social enrichment, that screaming, you're not going to be providing that social enrichment if the screaming's happening. That's another mistake we make a lot. The screaming happens, we do the, hey, shh, stop, come on, be quiet. And then suddenly our bird's saying, hey, shh, stop, come on, be quiet. So you want to think about how you're offering that social enrichment to decrease those behaviors. So go out on a limb and try new things. Enrichment can help birds that are hesitant to try new things. And don't let your preconceived opinions guide what you offer. Please do your best to not decide what they're going to like and what they're not going to like. There are certain things, like Tracy, we were talking about things that they already love. There are certain things that okay, this just doesn't work with this bird. This is not something that they like to interact with, that I've observed them interacting with. But Also, try some new things. Don't make decisions for your birds before you try it. Sometimes you're like, I never thought he would like that. And it really is something that now he engages with all the time. So you want to think about your judgment versus what you're actually observing. And you can use, if you've got multiple birds sharing a space, you can promote cooperation and enhance some skills. You can use enrichment for balance. Like these are very young birds. And I think we think about balance as I've got to give them a perch. Well, these two toys require them to have some balance and to build some balance. And you can build those kind of skills with younger birds or with birds that may be experiencing, some setbacks, some physical setbacks. If they have, for a rehomed bird, if they weren't offered a lot of activity, they may need to kind of build up those muscle, build up those skills. And so by offering toys that hang from the middle, they're not easy to get on and they require some skill. After a safe introduction, the two birds on the right-hand side, enrichment can promote cooperation and socialization. Sometimes you can get birds to work on a toy together, but be very careful when you do it, that you're not promoting, aggressive behavior. They're not biting one another. They're not, there's not one trying to take over that toy versus the other one having it. So it's kind of like do we have enough for everybody when you were in school? Do you have enough gum for everybody? So you want to make sure that there's enough opportunity for all of them. But if they are, you can definitely promote some cooperation and socialization using enrichment. So you don't have to try all the options at once. It can, like, I know when I go to trainings and stuff, I go home and I want to do everything that I heard, everything that everybody suggested. I want to try all those things. You don't have to try them all at once. And you want to allow time for the enrichment to have an effect. So if we're looking at enrichment as behavior modifying, we want to make sure that we are in fact modifying that behavior, that we are in fact meeting the goal that we set for it, versus just, put it in, it didn't work, I could take it out. Or put it in, it changes the behavior for a little bit, but then we revert back to what we were at. So we really want to think about, make sure that it has enough of an effect and that we leave it long enough. And multiple options may have the same desired outcome. This goes back to not getting stuck. So if you're providing something and it works, it's in our nature to stick with that. But keep trying different things because you may find different ways to get that outcome that you're looking for. So assess for success. You need to determine what success looks like. Okay. We can say, oh, that was a successful interaction. A successful interaction for me may be very different from what you deem a successful interaction. There are times when offering an enrichment opportunity and the bird avoids, that is enriching. Okay. You may not look at it that way, but for me, that's part of it. So you need to, if you're going to really do this and you're going to create a program and you're going to really try to modify some behavior with enrichment offerings, then you have to figure out, when you set your goal, you have to figure out what success is. Is it the bird interacted for 5 minutes? The bird interacted and didn't pluck for 2 minutes? The bird interacted with the opportunity and for an hour? Okay, that's pushing it in a lot of cases, but I have worked with birds that will work on something, all day long. So you want to determine what success looks like. Not all options work. I mean, that's the reality of things. There are things that just don't fly, for lack of a better term, with our birds. So you want to be careful that you don't get invested and keep offering to make sure that it works. Be flexible in your approach. Training, enrichment, Working with animals is very, very fluid, and it has to be. If you go in with a very rigid plan and you're not going to change it, and this is what I decided I'm going to do, you're probably not going to have a lot of success. So you need to be willing to modify your ideas. You also need to be honest with yourself that, you know what, this just isn't working. And I put a lot of effort into it, but it's just not working. How do I change that? How do I make it more successful? You know, how do I get to that definition of success that I came up with in the beginning? You know, for me, this is a friend's daughter. And this, for these birds to be social like this is what success looked like. This is what we were looking for. That may not be success for everybody. That may not be what you're looking for. But we just want to define what that looks like. So enrichment is useful and it's fun. You know, and it's once you get a swing of things, once you get in kind of a routine of creating new opportunities, creating things that that keep your birds engaged, I trust me, you will find that this is the way to go. So we've got I this is a little, you know, where it's a little bit less than the 2 hours that we have blocked off, but I kind of hope that we have some questions and we can interact that way.
Yeah, I have, Diane had put this in the Q&A earlier. She has a 40-year-old tag, Timna, and a lot of his favorite lifelong enrichment activities are more limited now that he's got arthritis. I said, and he's had cancer on his wing. So she was wondering what you can, you know, what kind of enrichment is applicable for him, how to increase his mobility, I would imagine,
Sure.
those types of things.
So Diane, this is the arthritis is very common. A lot of people are dealing with birds that have arthritis, and the cancer on his wing. The fact that he's still doing well is great. So modifying enrichment for a bird like this, so all the things I said about not making it easy do not apply in this situation. We want to keep it to the point where the bird can easily access whatever those favorite enrichment activities were. If it's, I if you could like add into the chat like what some of those activities were, that would be great. But platforms are wonderful when dealing with birds that are challenged by arthritis. And with a wing, you want to put things lower. I would put, so a lot of foraging activities, things like that, are still possible, even with that limited mobility. Platforms and ramps, obviously ramps at a lower pitch than you might with another bird, but so the bird can access a lot of the cage and use that space. If falling is an issue, all of that should be lower. You don't want to set them up to fall down off what you've got in the cage. So, and the other thing you can do is put cushiony like towels, things like that on the bottom, depending on how limited the mobility is. But things like hanging things on the side, if the bird's accessing mostly like on the bottom, and with a Timna, a lot of the foraging and stuff in the field happens on the ground. African grays do both. But putting activities down on the ground, putting puzzles and things like that, foraging puzzles down on the ground, putting things on the lower, if you've got a platform perch, like a flat perch, put things up that, like around that perch, so that the bird can interact with them without having to do a ton of moving. I hope that, I mean, is that?
Yeah, I'm gonna allow mics because
Okay.
I know Diane can't get into the chat, so I'm going in and allowing microphones for everybody. So if you have a question, you can raise your hand, and I'm just allowing the mics. Diane, let me get you up here. Um, yeah, you should be able to ask your question. Diane, you able to? There you go. Okay, you can talk. Supposedly, there should be an easy way to do this.
There's never an easy way. Come on, technology.
Yes, okay, come on. Let me just allow the mic.
There we go. There we go.
Perfect.
I think my mic is on now, is it not?
Yes,
It is.
Okay, good. Yeah, hi. Those are great suggestions. Yeah, he has a platform. It's actually hand-shaped. I get it from a place in Nova Scotia that does a bunch of bird toys and really nice stuff. And he just absolutely loves it. He loves to kiss the fingers and, you know, stand on them and stuff like that. So it's pretty cool. But yeah, he only has the one wing now. He lost his left wing to cancer 3 years ago. He and I actually fought cancer at the same time, so it was pretty amazing. He's like my little cancer buddy. But he likes to climb on his cage. He's fearless. He likes to hang from the top. But I won't put any toys up there because, especially when he was first recovering, he had problems with falling. And we did buy 3 different sizes of cages: a travel cage, a slightly larger cage that was not as high, and now he's back in his big cage, and allowed him to gradually get used to most of those. Um, I have started doing toys made from paper towel rolls as hiding treats in the middle. And I was interested in your things to do. You said don't just concentrate on food, and I had been putting food in all of them. And I'm wondering what else I can do to just kind of make them interested in going for the foot toys, but without inundating him in so much food.
So I think, is he a shredder or a chewer?
Yes, he's a shredder of
Okay.
cardboard, especially.
Okay, so what I would suggest is creating small foot toys with the cardboard on them, or taking a bowl and putting a bunch of, like a toy bucket, if you will, or a toy bowl, where you just put a bunch of different things in it that he can interact with. And maybe it's put some like chili pepper or rub some basil on some of them. Trying different scents to get him interacting that way, because
Oh, cool.
the problem is with food enrichment is a lot of times people add that on to what they're already feeding, and then they don't understand why the bird's suddenly chubby. And you know, it's got to be, if it's, you know, you're feeding, I don't know what are you, if you're feeding a pelleted diet, you know, maybe there are certain parts of that diet that are favorites. Pull those out and put them in a foraging activity.
Okay.
Does that help?
Yeah, that does. That does. Thank you very much. That really helps.
And then as far as moving, so mobility is an issue, but you could, if you find a scent that he really likes, you can get him to move places that are safer or that you want him to move by putting scent trails on along where you would prefer him to be.
Oh, cool. Okay. I didn't think of that. The other question I had was he used to love taking baths. He has a bath bowl and he really loved it. But of course, he's much more restricted at dipping in the water and doing that now with one wing. Is there a way to allow him to interact with water without, you know, having him fall in the bowl, that kind of thing?
You could do, so if you're handy, you can do an on-demand shower. That's motion. You take a small motion detector, and then you put a little, you know, shower spigot, a small one. And if he moves in front of it, it showers. We did that. We created those for elephants a long time ago. And the problem is you just have to make sure they're not standing in front of it constantly, because then you have the waterlogged bird. You can do that. You can do have you ever tried just using a spray bottle mister?
Yeah, and he does love that, but there are just some days when he really wants his bath bowl and he asks and asks for it, but he's just limited to sticking his beak in now and kind of splashing around without getting much out of it.
So you could do a flat pan, like a pie pan,
Oh, okay.
that shape. And if you're worried about, that it's too deep, or you can put what I call river rocks. They're about that big,
Oh,
um,
yeah.
in the bottom. And then it's kind of, he can stand on the river rocks, and he can kind of move around that way, but not be completely immersed in the water.
Cool. Okay. Yeah, I hadn't thought of that at all. That's a great idea.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
So Tracy had asked, can we open Tracy's mic if she's still here? Tracy
Yeah,
had asked
everybody's
about,
open. They just have to unmute themselves.
okay.
Yeah.
So Tracy, new ideas for changing the environment. What are we looking for?
So I have 5 parakeets in a double flight cage, and I I don't know if changing their existing perches and toys and things just around the cage is enough. If I constantly, which I do, create new toys and put new toys in, but I'm never sure if I'm doing it as often as I should, if I'm giving them as much activity. I kind of fight my brain over space versus things for them to play on.
Uh-huh.
So I don't know how much is too much or if there's too little, like things like that. Like I constantly question everything. So
Okay. So first of all, the fact that you're here and the fact that you're asking those questions, don't beat yourself up. You're doing great. Okay. And changing things up is, there is no hard fast rule. I have a colleague that she changes her bird's cage once a week, changes it all up, puts all new stuff in. Um, and I'm like, wow, that's pretty impressive. But I don't know that that's the way to go. She observes her bird. She has a kayik, and he tears through everything, and that works for him. But there are other birds that, they'll work on a toy for a month, and there's nothing wrong with that. With budgies, I like to have plenty of space for them to move around, because they are so wonderfully active. And so you want to have enough things in there so that if they all 5 of them decided they wanted to not have anything to do with the other ones that day, they could all have something to do. Okay. But you don't want to have that they can't move around the cage, because I've seen cages before where, like, the bird's bopping itself on the head because there's too much stuff, and people are really trying their best and they want to provide a lot of stuff, but it's too much. And there's no hard fast rule as far as this many, this number of toys in a cage, or this number of opportunities. So does that help at all?
it does. And I think one of the things too is I've seen some cages where people just have it crammed full of branches and things like that. And I think it's what you were talking about earlier is we're trying to make things easy for the bird to get around, and they need to stretch and work and move. And so that makes me feel better about that as well.
Oh, good. Okay. And, foraging, like I said, I mean, I think Elaine's still here. Elaine's bird forages for Kamala forages for everything. And, that's amazing. But offering foraging and building up to that is, for me, the way to go. And just, so you offer, for me, foraging is the TV babysitter. So if you're offering foraging, then that'll keep them busy, right? And if they're going through stuff right away, make it a little bit more difficult. But you know, I have to admit, as a mother, there were days when I sat my son in front of the TV. You know, I was busy and I had stuff I had to do. So to me, foraging is that kind of activity for our birds. It's absolutely necessary. It's absolutely something we want to encourage. Um, and it's absolutely something that can help get rid of behaviors we don't want to see. Because if they're doing things, they're not going to be doing like plucking or biting. Um, yeah, think outside the cage. Toy branches laid on top. Oh, that's a great idea, Wendy. Um, Definitely, you know, having things on the side, having things depending on what their environment is, how much access they have, you really want to make sure that it's all enriching. That's a big issue that can lead to behavioral issues. Is if you make the cage like it's like Disneyland in there, and then you ask them to come out, why would they want to? They've got food, they've got buddies, they've got stuff to interact with, and now you're saying, come out here and hang out with me? No, mom, sorry, I'm going to Disney World. And then the flip side of that is when you make the outside Disney World, you've got this play stand, it's wonderful, la la la. Why would I want to go back in that cage? I wouldn't. So I was consulting at Audubon Zoo in New Orleans, and they had this primate exhibit that was like they had just redone the exhibit. It was beautiful. It had you know, hanging stuff and swings and platforms and all this, and they were having a really hard time getting them to go back into holding at night because they had to take them off exhibit every night. And so I'm like, well, let's kind of walk the exhibit. So we did. And they had to go over this like rickety bridge to get to the holding. Like it was, I mean, probably not rickety if you were a monkey, but it was rickety for me. And then into the holding area that was a cage, you know, in essence, a cage. It was a concrete bunker, which is what a lot of zoo holding is. And it had one toy in there. I wouldn't want to go back in there either if I had this big swinging playground out front. So you've got to figure out ways to make them equally enriching. And there has to be, when it's time to go, first of all, make enough time to go back in. Don't do I have to go to work right now. You need to get back in your cage, right? I think we've all been guilty of that at one time or another. Okay. Make sure you're leaving enough time for transitions, and that the inside of the cage is just as intriguing as the outside. So, Elaine says she makes foraging food cups for Kamala and places them in different areas each day. Yeah, I mean, it's so easy to do. And it just keeps them moving. And foraging in itself is a wonderful form of exercise if you don't make it too easy. You know, if you don't put it all in the same general area. You know, we do such wonderful jobs with these guys, having them in our homes, having them in our lives, but we just need to make sure that it's not too easy. I don't know who this is.
It's Christy. Go ahead, unmute yourself.
Hi, this is Jason and Christy here. We have a conure, and we're good. I think we're good, but we're not exactly trying to find a toy for her. Everything that we've given her seems to be is just negated. I don't know. Is there a way to find? Is there a good way to find something for her that could be? I don't know. This because we like to do the foraging thing, and we could do it. We could do it with food. We don't do it enough, and I think a toy would be good for this. But we just can't seem to. We've got a whole bucket full of toys. I mean, a gallon bucket full of toys, or 2 gallon bucket full of toys, and she won't play with any of them. It's just weird trying to find her something to play with, and that's why we'd like to see what ideas we might have for a conure. That would help.
So I don't know if Debbie's still here or not. Debbie, I've said this to Debbie before. Bribery works. It It so does. And yeah, so Debbie's still here. Do you agree, Debbie? Bribery does work. So taking a toy, so I bet some of the toys you already have can become more intriguing if you add a food element.
Oh,
So things like I know, Wendy, you guys at Parrot University, you have some leather elves toys, and a lot of them can be made into foraging toys. Um, Thank you very much, Elaine. Um, we do have a lot of wood cups, things like that. I don't know if you guys have them at the store, but do you have, Jason, if you guys have a drill and you've
uh-huh.
got a wooden toy that's like got a block on it, if you drill a hole in that piece of wood, and then what's your conier's favorite treat?
Well, we apples and it seems like a month on, a month off. It's sunflower seeds.
Okay, so take that apple or take a sunflower seed, drill a hole in the wood block and put it in there. So
Okay.
now your birds decided that, okay, this is a good place to be. I'm
Mhm.
getting things I want. And oh, wait, I can chew this up at the same time. And your bird may not be one that destroys things. That's a possibility too. Um, I don't know, Wendy, are there any at the store, are there like the plastic um like foraging wheels and things like that?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
okay. So some of those, something like that, Jason, might work.
Mhm.
But yeah, sometimes Tracy says sometimes it takes a month before they begin to play with something new. And it's so true. But that bribery piece, getting
Mhm.
them to, it's like you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. So you get that bird to the toy, and then once they realize, oh, this isn't, something, first of all, that's going to eat me. Second of all, that, I can interact with. The other thing, so do you guys have, I mean, you guys have a good relationship with the bird?
Yeah, she's out all day.
Okay.
Somebody's at home all the time, either Christy or myself, and she's out from in the morning till it gets dark at night. So.
Um,
But yeah, I think that's. Well, I'm sorry, that's not the answer to your question. But yeah, she's out and she flies around. We haven't clipped her wings or anything. She's out and about and she gets on the floor all the time whenever she can. So I think the relationship is pretty solid here.
Good. Okay, so where you've got that relationship, sometimes modeling behavior works, so that, if you guys like take a toy and interact, like move it around, interact with it, um,
Mhm.
because they are flock animals, sometimes they will model, do that behavior if they see another. Yep, there you go. Play with it in front of your bird. Great minds, Wendy, and show,
Yes.
when you show her when you put the treat in it.
Yeah.
And so, it's that, oh, hey, this other member of the flock, because that's what you guys are. This other member of the flock is playing with that. Maybe I can play with that.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Thank you. Do you have anything?
Yeah. I think she likes to help prep cook. Like obviously I don't want her around things that are dangerous, but if I have vegetables that are chopped up or she sees me like peeling things, and she wants to help with that. So I feel like that's enrichment in some way,
Absolutely.
you know.
It's so that kind of clicks the socialization box. It clicks the, she's probably foraging while while you're doing that prep work. And it's that interaction, that movement. So yeah, no, that's absolutely enriching. Enrichment, it's got this big title, but so many times it's just about the interactions. It's just about, something new in the environment. And it doesn't always have to be, it can be a visual thing. It can be something they're seeing. I think we put a little bit too much on the tangible, on the toy. And, as a toy maker, I appreciate that. But, it's not always just the toy.
All
Okay.
right. Thank you.
You're welcome. So do we have any other questions? or suggestions? Anybody got stuff they do that they want to share? That's, for me, that's what you guys have to do. You got to share with each other the things that you're doing.
So we're all good. Let me take this time to update. We have our September calendar here.
Nice.
Let's see. We have our Fun with Food workshop on the 21st, where you can go to our website and get out the info on that. The 22nd, we have our avian behavior with Debbie.
Yay.
Yes, and that is it as far as our specialty classes for September. And then if you're doing the adoption thing, we have our core classes, which actually take them again. I mean, because we like you jam a lot of info in those classes, and it's hard to digest. So let's see.
So
Yes.
we've got a couple of comments here. So Bonnie says, when Gabriel was 6, she was told to go to the dollar store and buy paper gift bags so she could easily throw away at the end of the night. Yeah, as long as they're not all shiny, you're good. Kamala likes when she reads her board books. She asked her to find cookies and characters. It's awesome. I was just down in Key West at Nancy Forrester's Secret Garden, and Nancy works with her hyacinth and says, you know, find the ghost. She's got a Halloween book. Find the orange pumpkin. And the bird has learned that to do that. So that's some really cool interaction. Debbie, this is a great idea. The softwood like yucca. Poke a hole, stick a sunflower in, great for beginning foragers. Yeah. And Debbie, that's a really good point, that there are beginning foragers, and we can't, they gotta, you know, walk before they can fly kind of thing. They've got, you know, and but you've got to be aware that when it's time to up the criteria, that it starts off, you know, I've got this, okay, it's super simple. It's covered with a piece of paper. Okay, now the paper, I've figured out that I can just move the paper, and now, okay, now maybe we crumple it up in the paper. Now we put, you know, it someplace else. So you've got to build that, difficulty, increase the difficulty as they go. But yeah, there are definitely beginner layers of complexity. Absolutely. Okay, so not the yucky bags. Yeah. Honestly, I love lunch bags. You know, you buy them and they're just cheap for a big stack of 50, and you can put all kinds of stuff in them. And sometimes you can put like non-food items in there, put toy parts. If you've got a bird that likes to chew up wood parts, throw a whole bunch of toy parts in with some crinkle paper, and then just close the bag up. And the other thing with foraging is sometimes you don't get the food item. So, you know, you get the wad of paper, but there's not a food item in there, because the reality is, if you're in the wild and you're foraging, you might not find something today. So yeah, Debbie, it's definitely, you know, you can't always win. Sometimes you know, differential reinforcement. You've got to be aware that it's not always going to be the big woohoo. But the foraging activity and that motion that is what you're looking for. So
Absolutely. Well, I've learned a bunch of things with you, and it's wonderful. Let's see. Yeah, we're gonna have to come around again. I was talking earlier about having like having a team, a board where we can sit and just talk about enrichment training, all that good stuff, and have a open panel. So we'll have to do that again. I know Debbie. Yeah, that would be fun. Yeah. Last time we did it was pandemic time. It was Debbie and Ask the Vet, Ask the Trainer. So I want to start doing more of these things. But Robin, thank you so much for your time. It was wonderful to see you when you were here in Charlotte, and also here right now. Yeah, check out the Leather Elf. She makes some wonderful toys. I mean, and it's true, when you make them, different opportunities of which way to hang them, so that it's all about that balance and getting them moving. And you know what you're doing, girlfriend.
Well, thank you very much. And it was great questions, everybody. And definitely, continue enriching. And it sounds like you guys are all doing what you need to do. So just have fun with it.
Well, without further ado, we thank you so much. Yeah, until we meet again, everybody be safe. Do something new for your bird. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, every day. It's just something, yeah. You can do what? There's 5 different approaches to enrichment. Do one a day. There you go.
Thanks, Wendy.
All right. Well, thank you all very much for your time, and be good. See
Take
ya.
care.
Take care. Bye-bye. Okay. All right.